Greetings, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me this evening. As Gala and I prepare to return to Europe, after 8 very happy and I may say profitable years in your wonderful United States, I think it behoves me to review my not entirely uninteresting or unimportant life. You are doubtless an intelligent public who have purchased and read my brilliant autobiography, The Secret Life of Salvador Dali. However, just in case some of you have been just a little bit too busy, I have here prepared an abstract, which I will share with you. But before we begin, a caveat, a word of warning. On the walls of Gaudi's magnificent and edible cathedral of La Sagrada Familia, the Holy Family in Barcelona, is written in Catalan the words, "Què est la veritat?" What is truth? I hope this evening you will tarry for my truth, or at least today's truth. What you choose to believe or not is entirely up to you. Now, I wake up every morning with the wonderful realization that I am Dali. The only difference between me and a madman is I am not mad. Vidi licet. I see, I read. I, Dali, believed when I was 6 years old that I wanted to be a cook. When I was 7, I wanted to be Napoleon. And my ambition has been growing ever since. I was born on May the 11th, 1904, in the town of Figueres in Catalonia, near to the Spanish border, the Franco-Spanish border. My father, Don Salvador Dali y Custi, was a free-thinking lawyer. Father's strict discipline was softened by my Catholic mother, Felipa Dominic Ferez, who understood and encouraged my artistic endeavors. My elder brother, who had been named Salvador, had died of gastroenteritis 9 months before my birth. When I was 5 years of age, I was taken by my parents to my brother's grave and told that I was my brother's reincarnation, a concept which I believe to this day. My doting parents, and indeed my whole family, indulged my every desire. An uncle once gave me a fancy dress, king costume, and I strutted about the house, lording it over everyone. I also had a sister, Anna Maria, who was 3 years younger. I resented her arrival very much, and once memorably kicked her in the head. Perhaps, fortunately, not fatally. As you see here, she later became a useful early model. I had shown early, precocious artistic ability in my drawings. Drawing, my friends, is honesty. You cannot cheat. It is either good or bad. My drawings were always good. In 1916, I had discovered modern painting through the influence of Ramon Pichot, a local artist and family friend who made regular trips to Paris. He painted in the Impressionist style and was a friend of Picasso. I had my first public exhibition at the Municipal Theatre in Figueres in 1919. That theatre is a place most precious and dear to me. When I was 16 years of age, my beloved mother died of breast cancer. My mother's death was the greatest blow I have ever experienced. I worshipped her and was desolated by her loss. After her death, my father married my mother's sister, my Aunt Tita. At first I was very resentful, but with time I have had to come some respect for my aunt. In 1922, I moved to the Residencia des Estudiantes, the students' residence in Madrid, in order to study at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts. Academy? Phew. I learned far more from studying the pictures in the Prado, especially the works of Hieronymus Bosch, Diego de Vázquez, and Francisco Goya. As a student, I began to attract attention as an eccentric and a dandy. At the Residencia, I became close friends with Luis Buñuel and Federico García Lorca. Lorca adored me, but I rejected the poet's homosexual advances. So sad he was murdered in the Spanish Civil War, a wicked waste of a genius almost as great as mine. My paintings, in which I experimented with cubism, earned me notoriety and attention. My only information on Cubist art had come from magazine articles and a catalogue given me by Ramon Pichot. I also experimented with Dada, that anti-art reaction movement to the insanity of the Great War, a movement that foreshadowed surrealism. In 1926, I had the great honor to be expelled from the Academy. The examining jury had asked me to select a subject, and I responded, "No. Given that none of you have the competence to judge me, I withdraw." King Alfonso XIII himself personally signed my order of expulsion from the Royal Academy. In my considered opinion, my friends, that paper is His Majesty's supreme masterpiece. I then made my first visit to Paris, where I met my god, Pablo Picasso. I said to him, "Master, I have come to see you first before I go to view the Louvre collections." And he responded, "Quite right, very sensible." I devoured influences from many styles of art, ranging from the most academically classic to the most cutting-edge avant-garde. My classical influences included Raphael, Vermeer, Velázquez. I used both classical and modernist techniques, sometimes combined, sometimes in separate works. Exhibitions of my paintings in Barcelona attracted much attention together with praise and puzzlement from the critics. I grew a flamboyant moustache in the style of the Spanish master painter Diego de Vázquez. The moustache has become my iconic trademark. In 1929, in Paris, I collaborated with my former student friend, the surrealist filmmaker Louis Buñuel, on a short film, Le Chien Andalou, the Andalusian dog. I helped Buñuel write the script for the film, a film designed to shock, which it most sensationally did. I hasten to add it was not really the girl's eye, rather that of a dead bullock from the abattoir. The decaying donkeys in grand pianos also upset people. The putrefying asses represented the petty-mindedness of the bourgeoisie. We followed this movie with the equally outrageous L'Âge d'Or, the Age of Gold. This caused a very nice riot and a closure of the film by the authorities. Most gratifying. In Paris, I allied myself with Monsieur André Breton's surrealist group. The surrealists praised my paranoiacal critical method of assessing the subconscious for greater artistic creativity. This was inspired in part by Sigmund Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the most important part of my life story. In 1929, I met my lifelong primary muse and inspiration, my future wife, Gala. She was a Russian immigrant, 10 years my senior. At that time, she was married to the surrealist poet, Paul Éluard. So, I painted his portrait and seduced his wife. A fair exchange. Between ourselves, our courtship, the courtship of Gala and myself, was a little unusual. I recall that I threw back Gala's head, pulling it by the hair, and trembling with complete hysteria, I commanded, "Now, tell me what you want me to do with you, but you must tell me slowly, looking me in the eye, with the crudest, the most ferociously erotic words that can make both of us feel the greatest shame." Then Gala, transforming the last glimmer of her expression of pleasure into a hard stare of her tyrannical eyes, answered, "I want you to kill me." I was somewhat disappointed by this demand, since it was merely what I wanted to do already. I did contemplate throwing her off the bell tower of the Cathedral of Toledo, but I felt it would not make a pretty pattern on the cobbles below. Instead, I became Gala's abject slave. My father strongly disapproved of my connection with Gala. He saw my membership of the Paris Surrealists as a bad influence on my non-existent morals. The final straw came when Don Salvador read in a Barcelona newspaper that I had recently exhibited in Paris a drawing of the Sacred Heart of Jesus Christ with a provocative inscription, "Sometimes I spit for fun," on my mother's portrait. Outraged, Don Salvador demanded that I apologize and recant publicly. I refused, and my loving father told me I was disinherited and cast me out of the family home. No matter. The following summer, Gala and I rented a small fisherman's cabin at Port Legat. We bought the place, and over the years enlarged it by buying the neighboring fishermen's cabins, gradually building up a greatly loved villa by the sea. In 1931, when Gala and friends go to the cinema, I eat some ripe, gooey camembert cheese. And I paint perhaps my most famous work, The Persistence of Memory, which introduced my iconic surrealist image of soft, melting pocket watches, a rejection of the assumption that time is rigid or deterministic. Gala and I, having lived together since 1929, were married in 1931 in a semi-secret civil ceremony. In addition to inspiring many of my artworks, Gala has been my business manager, supporting our colorful lifestyle while adeptly steering us clear of insolvency. Now, in 1934, we first came to your wonderful United States. We came at the invitation of the art dealer, Julian Levy. The exhibition at his New York gallery of my works, including The Persistence of Memory, naturally created an immediate sensation. The cream of New York society feted me at a specially organized Dali ball. Later in that year, Gala and I also attended a masquerade party in New York City, hosted for us by that wonderful brassiere heiress, Caresse Crosby, and her whippet with the extremely naughty name, which I will not repeat here, but you can ask me afterwards if you are over 18 years of age. For our costumes at this party, Gala and I dressed as the Lindbergh baby and his kidnapper. The resulting uproar in the press was so great that I was forced very reluctantly to apologize. And when we returned to Paris, my surrealist friends condemned me for apologizing for a surrealist action. However, I was beginning to become disenchanted with Monsieur Breton and the Paris surrealists. While the majority of them had become increasingly associated with leftist politics, I remained apolitical. Monsieur Breton even accused me of admiring Hitler. When I declared that the little man with the Charlie Chaplin moustache was interesting from a surrealist point of view, Breton had me formally expelled from the surrealist group. At this, I declared, n'importe quoi. What does it matter? I, Dali, am surrealism. I have been on the cover of Time magazine. Have you? I rest my case. In 1936, I took part in the London International Surrealist Exhibition. My lecture, entitled Fantômes paranoïques authentiques, Paranoid Authentic Ghosts, was delivered while wearing a deep-sea diving suit and helmet. I had arrived leading a pair of Borzoi Russian wolfhounds. My lecture was memorable not so much for what I said, but for the fact that I had to have the helmet unscrewed with a spanner before I suffocated. Gasping, I commented, "I just wanted to show that I was plunging deeply into the human psyche." In this period, my friends, my main patron in London was the very wealthy poet and surrealist enthusiast, Mr. Edward James. Here is his famous portrait by Magritte. Mr. James had helped me by purchasing many works and by supporting me financially for 2 years. He and I collaborated on two of the most enduring icons of the surrealist movement, the lobster telephone and the Mae West Lips sofa. You see, I like to give wealthy people like Mr. James in London and the Vicomte de Noailles in Paris the privilege of assisting me financially. I adore money. It is so very useful, and it makes my gala very, very happy. Meanwhile, my beloved Spain was engulfed in her terrible civil war. My comment was to paint the burning giraffe and soft construction with boiled beans. On the eve of the Second War, I met the exiled Sigmund Freud in London. I sketched Herr Freud's portrait. To my great delight, the 82-year-old celebrity confided to his friends, "That boy, Dali, looks and behaves like a mad fanatic." Wonderful. Back in America, in 1939, at the New York World's Fair, I created my Dream of Venus surrealist pavilion. It featured bizarre sculptures, statues, and live nude models in costumes made of fresh seafood. However, whilst working on the window display for Bonwit Teller on Fifth Avenue, I became so enraged by unauthorized changes to my work. The prudes had covered up my nude mannequins, that I shoved a decorative bathtub through a plate glass window. I was arrested and spent a memorable hour in a New York City police cell. In Paris, my former friend, Monsieur André Breton, coined for me the derogatory nickname Avida Dollar, an anagram for Salvador Dali, in a phonetic rendering of the French phrase avide à dollar, meaning eager for dollars. This was a derisive reference to the increasing commercialization of my work and the perception that I sought self-aggrandizement through personality cult and material wealth. Breton and his minions henceforth spoke of me in the past tense, as if I were dead. The surrealists would continue to issue extremely harsh polemics against me, as more recently has the English hack scribbler George Orwell in his belittling review of my brilliant autobiography. In 1940, as Hitler's pretty stormtroopers tore through Europe, Gala and I retreated permanently to the United States, where we have lived very happily for the past 8 years, visiting the St. Regis in New York City, but based at the Del Monte Hotel first, and then Pebble Beach Lodge in Monterey, California. Very cleverly, Gala and I got very good terms at the Del Monte Hotel at the start of the 17-mile drive. We were given a double room at a special rate, with an adjacent studio absolutely free. Our presence there was very good for the hotel. It was there that I created my magnificent Night in a Surrealist Forest Ball. This was to raise funds for war-distressed and displaced European artists. For a start, I ordered 2,000 pine trees, 4,000 gunny sacks, the largest bed in Hollywood, a wrecked automobile with nude store mannequins, and assorted zoo animals, including a giraffe and a lion cub. Gala was to preside in a bed which came from the set of The Merry Widow and could sleep 10, complete with the lion cub. More than 1,000 applied for the 400 places. Every socialite worth the name wanted to be there. The Vanderbilts and Hitchcocks flew in from New York, and Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, Ginger Rogers, and Clark Gable represented Tinseltown. It was a triumph, at least for me. When you've got it, flaunt it, as I did in my anatomical top. Unfortunately, the expenses exceeded the takings, so there was nothing for the distressed artists. Tant pis, so much the worse, as the French say. It was, my friends, a wonderfully amusing evening. Alas, 5 days later, America got serious following Pearl Harbor. For a time, I was an ornament of the Carmel Art Association, a mutually advantageous arrangement. I was able to give the aspiring American artists my excellent advice, and they were able to give me their very useful money. In 1944-5, I collaborate with Mr. Alfred Hitchcock on his movie Spellbound, for which I create a wonderful dream sequence. However, the producer, Mr. David O. Smelsick, as I call him, cut the sequence down from 20 minutes to a mere 2. A wicked waste. I also work for the amazing Mr. Walter Elias Disney on an animated cartoon project, Destino. I produce an intriguing storyboard, but there was not enough money to complete the film. But maybe one day it will be done. During my time in America, little by little, I began to return to the practice of my dear mother's Catholicism. I do not yet have faith, and sometimes I fear that I may die without heaven. In 1942, as you know, I published my brilliant autobiography, The Secret Life of Salvador Dali. For a consideration, I am prepared to sign you a copy as you leave. You may purchase them here at the bookstore. In conclusion, my friends, let me leave you with this. As you view my seemingly confused canvases, portraying my melting watches, my crutches, my human drawers, my scurrying ants, my decaying donkeys, my burning giraffes, my rocks of cadasses, and my Gala, my muse in her myriad manifestations, the question is not what do I mean by it all, but rather, what do you see? What do you feel? What crawls under your skin? What is under your bed? That place where you dream. So, goodbye, Monterey. Viva España. Viva Catalonia. Viva les Estados Unidos. And supremely, viva Dali. Epilogue. Dropping out of character and into a easier accent. In 1948, Dali and Gala moved back into their house at Port Legat on the coast near Cadasses. For the next 3 decades, he would spend most of his time there painting, taking time off to visit Paris and New York. In Spain, his acceptance of Franco's dictatorship was strongly disapproved of by other Spanish artists and intellectuals who remained in exile. In 1959, André Breton organized an exhibit called Homage to Surrealism, celebrating the 40th anniversary of the movement. It contained works by Dali. But Breton vehemently opposed the inclusion of Dali's Sistine Madonna in the International Surrealist Exhibition in New York the following year. The shock of Hiroshima and the dawning of the atomic age profoundly moved Dali. Therefore, he labeled this period his nuclear mysticism. In 1960, Dali began work on his theatre and museum in his hometown of Figueres. It was his largest single project and a main focus of his energy through 1974 when it was opened. He declared, quote, "I want my museum to be a single block, a labyrinth, a great surrealist object. It will be a totally theatrical museum. The people who come to see it will leave with the sensation of having had a theatrical dream." In Dali's later years, young artists such as Andy Warhol proclaimed him an important influence on pop art. Dali continued to indulge in publicity stunts and self-consciously outrageous behavior. In 1968, he filmed a humorous television advertisement for Lanvin chocolates, in which he proclaims in French, "Je suis fou du chocolat Lanvin." I am crazy about Lanvin chocolate, whilst biting a morsel, causing him to become cross-eyed and his moustache to swivel upwards. In the 27 television program Dirty Dali, A Private View, the highly controversial but colourful English art critic Brian Sewell argued that quote, "Dali's only masterwork of the post-war period is his Christ of St. John of the Cross of 1951. Incidentally, my own amazingly affected RP pronunciation is said to be the only tones that can make Queen Elizabeth II sound vulgar and common." In 1968, Dali had bought the castle of Pubol for Gala. And starting in 1971, she would retreat there alone for weeks at a time, enthroned with her myriad toy boys. By Dali's own admission, he had agreed not to go there without written permission from Gala. His fears of abandonment and estrangement from his longtime artistic muse contributed to depression. In 1980, at the age of 76, Dali's health took a catastrophic turn. His right hand trembled terribly with Parkinson-like symptoms. His near-senile wife allegedly had been dosing him with a dangerous cocktail of unprescribed medicine that damaged his nervous system, causing an untimely end to his artistic capacity. In 1982, King Juan Carlos bestowed on Dali the title of Marqués de Dali de Pubol in the nobility of Spain. Gala died that same year at the age of 87. After her death, Dali lost much of his will to live. He deliberately dehydrated himself, possibly in a suicide attempt. He moved from Figueres to the castle of Pubol, which was the site of Gala's death and her grave. In May of 83, he created what was to be his last painting, The Swallow's Tale, a work heavily influenced by the mathematical catastrophe theory. In 1984, a fire broke out in his bedroom, possibly a suicide attempt. He was rescued by friend and collaborator, the photographer Robert Deschamps, and returned to Figueres, where a group of friends, patrons, and fellow artists saw to it that he was comfortable living in his theatre museum for his final years. There have been allegations that Dali was forced by his guardians to sign blank canvases that would later, even after his death, be used in forgeries and sold as originals. In November of 88, Dali entered hospital with heart failure. A pacemaker had been implanted previously. In December of 1988, he was visited by King Juan Carlos, who confessed he had always been a serious admirer of Dali's work. Dali gave the king a drawing of the head of Europa. This would turn out to be Dali's final drawing. On the morning of the 23rd of January 1989, while his favorite record of Tristan and Isolde played, Dali died of heart failure at Figueres at the age of 84. He is buried in the crypt below the stage of his theatre and museum. Gracias. Thank you.